$214. That's what's left after rent. Not left over, left. The number sits on the screen on a Tuesday morning and you stare at it the way you'd stare at a crack in the ceiling. Not an emergency yet, but quietly spreading. You're 24. You have a degree, a job, 11 days until payday, and a car that's been making a sound you've spent 3 months pretending not to hear. This is not a crisis, you tell yourself. This is just how it starts. Everyone begins here. But somewhere in the back of your head, a question is assembling itself out of parts you don't recognize yet. Something like, what if it doesn't have to take 40 years? The 40 years, it's worth knowing, were never a law of nature. Retirement is an invention, and a fairly recent one. In 1889, Otto von Bismarck's Germany created the world's first state pension, payable at 70, at a time when most workers didn't live to collect it. The number 65 came later, chosen by committees, and the whole modern script, work 4 decades, get the send-off, then rest, was drafted by governments and companies for their own arithmetic, not always yours. The average person today retires around 64. 40 years of alarm clocks and performance reviews and 2 weeks of annual vacation, following a script somebody else wrote in the age of the steam engine. The first shift is realizing that the timeline itself is something you can question, not just accept. You don't know any of this yet. You just know that $214 feels like a cage whose bars you can't quite see. So you start paying attention. Not to motivation, not to hustle sermons, to math. Cold, boring, stubborn math. And the math hands you something that changes the temperature of your entire life. Not a secret. A rule. So simple it feels like a typo. If your investments can cover your annual expenses on their own, you're free. That's the whole thing. In 1994, a financial planner in Southern California named William Bengen sat down with decades of market data because his clients kept asking a question nobody could answer precisely. How much can I safely spend? And he worked through every retirement start date in recorded history. His finding? Withdraw 4% of a portfolio each year, adjusted for inflation, and the portfolio survives at least 30 years, through every crash, every recession, every market cycle on the books. 4%. Flip it around, and it means you need 25 times your annual expenses. Nothing less. You do the arithmetic on a napkin at a diner at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, coffee refills courtesy of a waitress who's seen Stranger Things. Spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million. Spend $50,000, you need $1,250,000. The number is not infinite. The number has a shape. And for the first time in your adult life, thinking about money produces something other than anxiety. It produces a door. You are 24. You have $214. And now you have a target. The next discovery is that your salary was never the number that mattered. The only number that matters is the gap. The distance between what you earn and what you spend. Because the gap is what gets invested. And what gets invested is what eventually buys back your freedom. You make $52,000 and, like most Americans, you've been saving about 11% of it. You run that forward. At 11%, the road to $1 million takes roughly 35 years. You'd be 59. That's not early retirement. That's just retirement, with a few extra spreadsheets. So you cut. Not dramatically, carefully. 3 subscriptions. Lunch out drops from 5 days to 2. A cheaper apartment, 18 minutes farther from work, and on the longer bus ride, you read. Each cut registers not as sacrifice, but as a purchase. You are buying time at the best exchange rate you will ever be offered. The savings rate climbs, 11% to 22%, then 31%. At 26, your net worth crosses $10,000 for the first time in your life. $10,400 to be exact. And you check the account 3 times in one day. Not from stress, but from a feeling you don't have a word for yet. The number is disproportionately significant for what it actually is. Because it is. Because this is the day the direction changed. The first milestone is rarely about the money itself. It is about proving that the system can move in your favor. You open a brokerage account and put $3,000 into a total market index fund. The market drops 4% the following week, and your stomach drops with it. And you hover over the sell button and learn something no book could have taught you. You find out what you're made of in the first correction, never the first gain. You don't sell. You add $400 the next month, then $600. Then you automate the whole thing so the decision gets made every month before you're awake enough to overthink it. Somewhere in there, quietly, the frame flips. Money stops being something you earn and becomes something you direct. At 28, net worth $47,000, most of it in index funds, plus a Roth IRA you maxed for the first time. A raise arrives, $9,000 a year before tax. And here's where nearly everyone's story bends the other way. The nicer apartment, the newer car, lifestyle creep, the quiet assassin of every financial plan ever drafted. You do the strange thing instead. You keep the life exactly where it is and route the entire raise into investments. Savings rate, 41%. Because lifestyle inflation isn't a reward, it's a ransom. Every upgrade raises the number you need to be free, pushes the finish line further out while making the running feel like winning. The apartment gets nicer, the car gets quieter, and the debt is invisible because it's denominated in years and billed to a future version of you who isn't in the room to push back. The hardest financial decisions are often the ones where nothing changes today, but everything changes later. At 30, net worth $120,000, $97,000 invested, $23,000 split between an emergency fund and a high-yield account earning 4.7%. The money is now working its own night shifts. Not much yet, but you can feel the tide turning. You add a second engine, consulting on nights and weekends. $800 a month, then $1,400. You never touch a dollar of it. The salary covers the life. The side income is pure investment fuel. Your savings rate crosses 50%, which means something almost surreal. You now save more than you spend. And the question in your head quietly changes itself. It's no longer, how much should I save? It's, how close am I to free? At 32, net worth $280,000 with $241,000 invested. You run the projection. At a 7% average return, that $241,000 doubles to roughly $480,000 in a decade, even if you never add another cent. You will add many more cents, but the compounding has stopped being theoretical. It's a number on a screen that changes every month without your direct participation. The machine is starting to breathe on its own. There's a threshold hiding around here, and it's worth marking. Below $250,000, you're building the machine. Above it, the machine starts helping you build. 7% of $241,000 is nearly $17,000 a year, more than a month of your old salary, arriving from nothing but math and patience and a forgotten napkin from a diner. This is the point where wealth stops feeling like something you chase and starts feeling like something you have built. At 34, your net worth crosses $500,000. You sit with that one for a while, because the median American household has about $87,000 saved for retirement across an entire working life. And you're 34. You don't feel superior. You feel something quieter. The sensation of a different kind of life becoming visible, not as a fantasy, but as real date. Spend $50,000 a year, need $1,250,000. You're 40% of the way there. And then something the spreadsheet never modeled happens. A promotion. A big one. $68,000 to $94,000. And with it, a compliment shaped like a trap. You're good at this. We want more of you. And you feel the pull, not of money, of identity. Because somewhere in the last decade, the job quietly became part of how you understand yourself. The title, the meetings that feel important, the colleagues who know your coffee order, the structure that tells you what a Tuesday is for. The plan was always about escaping the need to work. You never asked what you'd be walking away from. Financial independence, it turns out, is only half a math problem. The other half is an identity problem. And the identity problem is harder, because you can solve the math in 10 years and not even discover the identity question exists until the math is already finished. You keep going, but the question sharpens. Not what is the number, what is the number actually for? At 36, net worth $820,000. You've lived on $46,000 a year for 3 years running. The consulting throws off $4,200 a month, and the portfolio's paper gains average over $57,000 a year, more than your original salary ever was. Then the test arrives. The market drops 22% in a single quarter. The portfolio falls from $820,000 to roughly $640,000. $180,000 gone from the screen in under 90 days. You had prepared for this intellectually for years, read the histories, rehearsed the composure. The reality is something entirely different. You open the app and your hands feel strange. Not shaking, strange. Like the floor moved an inch and settled somewhere slightly new. You don't sell, but for the first time, you understand, bodily, not academically, why people do. The gap between knowing the right move and being calm enough to make it is wider than any spreadsheet admits. And that's the real hazard of every long-term plan. Never the crash itself, the emotional response to the crash. Portfolios recover. Decisions made in fear usually don't. You close the app for 3 weeks and keep the automation running. $2,800 a month into the same funds, now 22% cheaper. machine isn't broken. The machine is simply on sale. This is the moment the theory becomes practice. The plan stops being an idea you admire and becomes a behavior you trust. 2 years later, the portfolio reads $960,000. You're 38. It crosses $1 million on a Thursday, mid-coffee, checked out of habit. 7 figures. You've rehearsed this calculation so many times that the actual moment lands almost silently. Not disappointing, just quiet. Like arriving at a place you've walked toward for years and finding it real, ordinary, and exactly where the map always said. Your expenses run $47,000 a year. The 25x target is $1,175,000. 8 more months of contributions and returns, and at 38 years and 4 months old, the portfolio crosses it. The math says done. The spreadsheet says you're free. And you don't quit. 1 more quarter, you think. 1 more bonus cycle. The market looks uncertain. A bigger buffer would be prudent. Except it isn't prudence. It's fear wearing prudence's coat. And the early retirement world has a name for it. 1 more year syndrome. The number is hit. The plan is complete. But leaving feels irreversible in a way no calculation covers. What if something breaks? What if healthcare spikes? The spreadsheet keeps saying yes. The brain keeps manufacturing another not yet. Because the cruelest secret of the whole project is this. The hardest part of financial independence was never reaching the number. It's believing it. The figure on the screen is real. The permission to act on it, nobody sells an index fund for that. The strange thing is that freedom can feel less like a finish line and more like a door you are suddenly responsible for opening. You stay 3 more months. Then you stop. No party, no announcement. You turn in the badge and drive home on a Tuesday at 10:47 in the morning on roads that are eerily empty at an hour you've only ever seen through office glass. You sit in the driveway a while. Not sad, not elated. Present. A thing you haven't been in years. What the plans never modeled is that freedom has a texture. 9 a.m. on a Monday feels different from any weekend that ever existed. You read. You exercise at noon in a half-empty gym full of retirees and night shift nurses. You pour time into a project that earns nothing and means everything. You miss some of the people. You do not miss the structure. The structure, you realize, was a container you'd outgrown long before you left it. The portfolio keeps working. On $1,175,000, a 7% average year produces about $82,250 in growth. You withdraw $47,000, the balance still climbs. Slowly, unevenly, with volatility, but without needing you to feed it. That's the actual definition, the one hiding under all the acronyms. Financial independence was never having a lot of money. It's having money that doesn't need you to survive. And that distinction changes everything, because the goal was never to escape work. It was to reclaim the ability to choose it. At 39, your net worth is $1,240,000, higher than the day you walked out, which you didn't plan and can't quite stop smiling about. There's one object left from the whole campaign. The napkin. The one from the diner, 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, 15 years and 1 lifetime ago. Coffee ring in the corner. The arithmetic in smudged pen. $50,000 times 25 equals $1,250,000. You found it in a box during the last move and couldn't throw it away. It lives in a desk drawer now, under the passport. Every so often, you take it out and look at it. This scrap of paper where a 24-year-old with $214 and a dying car first discovered that the cage had a key, and the key was a number, and the number had a clear shape. The napkin doesn't say anything profound. It's just multiplication. It was always just multiplication. The years of sacrifice, the spreadsheets, and the discipline all reduced to one simple equation, written by someone who didn't yet know how much was possible. That was the secret nobody kept. The door was never locked. It was only unmarked.